hot on the heels of this abolish your town financial emergency power assertion, Michigan Governor Rick Snyder this week decided to do something directly related to jobs. He is tackling unemployment in Michigan, by which I mean that yesterday Governor Snyder signed a measure passed by the Republican-led Michigan legislature that would cut unemployment benefits in the state by 6 weeks starting next year. Governor Snyder and Michigan Republicans are tackling the unemployment problem in their state by making sure that people without jobs in Michigan get less help. Let's just say you don't care whether or not the approximately 500,000 people who don't have jobs in Michigan will have to eat cat food for 6 weeks because of this measure. Let's not even talk about what unemployment benefits mean for each individual person who gets them. Let's not even talk about whether or not state government should be prioritizing the kinds of social safety nets that are all that's between, say, 500,000 working and middle-class Michiganders and abject poverty. Let's just get cold-hearted about it and talk instead about what unemployment benefits mean to the economy, what they mean not just to the person who's receiving them, but to everybody else who's trying to make it in this very slow recovery from the Great Recession. Here's the cold-hearted, economically important thing about people who don't have jobs. People who don't have jobs tend also to not have a lot of money, but they do still have to survive. So when they get money in the form of, say, unemployment benefits, they tend to spend that money right away. When they get $1, they do not file it away for a rainy day. It is raining already for them. And so if they get $1, they spend it on something they really need to spend it on, say food. Really efficiently, money spent on unemployment gets pumped back into the economy because of the nature of what it means to be unemployed. Moody's looked at the effectiveness of different economic policies in terms of the likely impact they would have on the economy as a whole. They found that for every dollar spent on extending unemployment benefits, we get $1.61 back in economic growth. So Michigan Republicans' idea of dealing with high unemployment in their state by making life harder for the unemployed, that isn't just mean, it's bad for Michigan's economy. Instead of taking lemons and making lemonade, they have taken lemons and they have started squeezing them into eyeballs and open cuts. Confronted with a lot of people in their state who are already hurting, Governor Rick Snyder and Michigan Republicans are making the whole state pay for the privilege of hurting those people just a little bit more. Joining us now is Dean Baker, economist and co-director of the Center for Economic and Policy Research. Thanks very much for joining us, Mr. Baker. It's nice to have you here.
Thanks a lot for having me on.
What will be the likely economic impact in Michigan of cutting way back on unemployment checks like this?
Well, it's just further downward pressure on their economy. I mean, the basic story we've seen across the country, in Michigan more than anywhere, is that there's an incredible shortfall of demand. We had this collapse of the housing bubble that had been driving the economy. That's gone. That destroyed $1.4 trillion in demand. We desperately need the public sector, the government, to come in and fill that gap. Unemployment insurance is a great way to do that. So, again, exactly as you said, apart from what it does to the workers and their families, this is cutting demand from Michigan's economy. Fewer jobs. How could that be a good story?
Well, at the federal level, we're seeing some of the same kinds of proposals. House Republicans also say they want to cut food stamps very dramatically federally. Would that have the same kind of economic impact across the country?
It's the same sort of story. People getting food stamps. It's the same situation with the unemployed. They don't have they need to spend that money. They need the food. And, the bizarre story, the Republicans seem to have this idea, at least implicitly, that somehow you have firms out there, you have stores, factories, offices. They're going to go out and hire people because they see, hey, the government cut food stamps, good time to hire. I don't know anyone like that. I've taken to asking the stores I go to, talking to the people there, are you going to hire people if the government cuts food stamps? I haven't found anyone say yes.
Republicans, of course, brand themselves as the fiscally conservative party, right? The fiscally smart party. And often enough, it works. People still have that impression of Republicans, even if they don't think that about individual Republican policies. But how is it that they have been able to sell the idea that giving more money to people who already have the most of it has a positive economic impact, and that there'll be a positive economic impact of taking money away from people who have the least?
Well, I think basically they've been playing against no opposition. Here I'm going to toss a grenade at President Obama. He's supposed to be the one calling the shots, setting the agenda. He should have been out there saying, look, we're in a recession because Wall Street went nuts. The government has to make up the demand. I don't want to do it. You know, no one wanted to be in a situation where we had 10% unemployment, but that was what he was in. The government has to make up the demand, and that means we have to spend money right now. We have to run large deficits, and unfortunately, the president really hasn't made that case, and it's very hard to do that in the absence of the leader of the party.
Well, we are facing this as in terms of a national political debate, but when you look at the way it's playing out in the states, it's devastating. I mean, this is a long-term coordinated project of the right to change economic policies in a way that take resources away from the people with the least and shift them towards the people with the most. McClatchy ran a really hard-hitting piece today on how states are prying open huge holes in their budget by cutting their revenues, particularly by cutting corporate taxes, even though it makes their budget deficits that much worse. Republican governors are saying there's a fiscal justification for doing that it's somehow fiscally conservative. I mean, would it make a difference for the president to make the argument at the federal level if the states are already sold on this, implementing it, paying the price, and still people don't understand it?
Well, there's two things. One is he has the podium of the presidency. That has a big impact on national politics. But also, from the standpoint of state and local governments, this is the backdrop. So the Republicans have been in this context of, oh, my God, we have these huge deficits. And I realize this is a totally contradictory story. So on the one hand, they say we have these huge deficits. We have to cut unemployment benefits. We have to cut, education spending, health care spending. Same time, they're slipping the money out the back door to their buddies in the corporations who pay for their campaigns. That's a contradiction, but nonetheless, the president really has to get out there and say, in this downturn, we need to spend money every way we can because that's what it's going to take to give jobs. I mean, that's why employers hire people, because people are coming through the door buying things, and if people don't have the money to buy things, well, the employers aren't going to hire people.
I think whether or not President Obama takes your advice on this, we are starting to see with Wisconsin and Ohio and Michigan and these other states, we are starting to see Democrats in the states not only who understand that, but who are willing to crow about it because they find that it immediately resonates with people as soon as you explain it. So this may be a bottom-up thing in Democratic politics. Dean Baker, economist and co-director of the Center for Economic and Policy